When we consider what the Trump administration specifically might want to get out of this meeting and what Japan is hoping to get in return, what are you looking for?
Well, it's across a broad range of issues. One, Japan is our number one foreign direct investor for the last 4 years. About 1 million Americans work for them. So ensuring there's a stability in that economic relationship is a principled not only trading partner, but then that kind of ripples into the next period for the United States, which is Japan's the long pole in the Indo-Pacific for the United States. Mm-hmm. Indo-Pacific is a home game for China. It's an away game for the United States. You level the playing field with your allies. Our largest military footprint outside of the United States in any single country is in Japan. Well over 50,000+ American servicemen and women. It's the only place in the world we have a permanent aircraft carrier permanently based there. In addition to that, whether you're looking at the Quad with India, Australia, Japan, the United States, the trilateral relationships between the United States, Japan, the Philippines, the United States, Japan, and Korea, the constant there alongside the United States is Japan on the diplomatic front. And it's key and essential when you looked at some of the export controls that the United States put on and dealt with from China on semiconductors and other high technology. Who's the other partner that walks the walk with the United States? Japan. So when you look at that composure, there's a lot to work with, both on economic statecraft, national security, and also on the diplomatic/political arena.
Well, when it comes to economic statecraft, though, when Donald Trump is suggesting that tariffs on Japan potentially would be on the table, what would that do to potentially this relationship, which you've just been described as being incredibly key in the Indo-Pacific?
Not only not only for the last 4 years has Japan been the number one direct foreign investor in the United States. 1 million Americans work for Japanese companies. About 43% is the back of the envelope, so it's not for peer review, but about 43% of that investment is in the manufacturing industrial place. You put tariffs on, you're going to affect a lot of that investment in the industrial area. Second, the United States represents about 9-10% of Japan's LNG. There's clearly a place to improve on that, or Japan can turn to other markets. I think we're the 5th largest United States LNG exporter to Japan. There's a place to be worked on from a nuclear SMR capacity. So there's a lot more economic engagement to happen rather than just tariffs. And I think, in fact, when I was there as ambassador, we improved Japan's involvement with the United States on ethanol and other soybeans and beef, a whole host of areas agriculturally, let alone industrially. We're the largest foreign direct investor in Japan. So engagement is where I would start rather than tariffs, because there's more to be gained given you have a willing partner on a whole host of front. And again, you're right to say, okay, let's talk about economics, but it ripples and it doesn't stay within a lane. It affects then what are we doing on national security? I mean, before there was a single tank on the Ukrainian border, Japan agreed to go to 2% defense budget, 2% of GDP for the defense budget. They are the largest acquirer of U.S. weapons. So they're going to become the 3rd largest defense budget. The entire investment gain in Japan on the defense side is not in personnel, but in equipment, and we're the largest exporter of that area. So there's a lot of leverage points here for a more engaged partnership rather than kind of hostile. Let me also then take this to a separate place if I can. You can have a conflict or a confrontational approach to your adversaries. But if you treat your allies in the same way, you then become isolated. One of the unique things we did over the last 4 years is isolate China in its own backyard, isolate it more and more in and around the area. If you constantly are confronting allies in the same vein in which you're confronting adversaries, you become isolated. And that doesn't play on America's strength. America's strength is not replicating, mirroring China's might through right through might. China's strategy, the United States strategy, is to replicate its strengths, alliances, values, economic integration. That's where we excel. And if you do a cheap version of China's wolf warrior and economic coercion, you're going to end up in the same place where China's economy is a mess right now. Their political support at home is a mess right now. And doing that will end up with the consequences. We were able, in the last 4 years, to isolate China because of their own actions. Doing the same thing China does, and a poor version of it, will only isolate the United States.
Well, as we talk about Japan as being an ally, the very fact that it is such an important ally was what led to a lot of confusion when the last administration moved to block the takeover of Nippon Steel of U.S. Steel. We learned from the president in the Oval Office today that he hasn't changed his mind on the idea that that deal should not go through. Now that you're out of the administration, looking back with hindsight, do you still stand by that call, or should this be revisited?
But as I said then, I believed and I believed it then, and I believe it now. One, the United States-Japan relationship is deeper, stronger than a single economic transaction. Second, 5 years ago, with the United States, when U.S. companies were looking at Ishiba, Japan put up the same barriers that the United States talked about as it relates to Nippon Steel and U.S. Steel. Third, about 4 weeks, 5 weeks, maybe a little longer, prior to the Nippon engagement, the United States granted a Japanese company a $20 billion contract to replace all of China's cranes in every American port. Now, I can't speak to what says trusted ally greater than a $20 billion contract to replace Chinese cranes with Japanese-built manufactured cranes that would be manufactured in the United States, because we trust Japan not to use that technology and data to spy on us and to engage in intellectual and economic espionage. That is a deep relationship. Will you have disagreements over issues? Yeah. But they're they're one of the largest purchasers of American weapons. They're a big purchaser of American agricultural products. They're a big purchaser of American LNG. I'm not here to kind of advocate for Japan, but I'm saying engaging an ally, saying, here's what we've got to see, is a better strategy than to treat that ally as if it's the same as an adversary. We have a technological challenge with China. This is not a Cold War vis-a-vis ideological like Russia. It is a technological challenge with China. Japan is a major technological country. From semiconductors, there's about 18 companies that produce anywhere close to 80% market share. You want them on your side in this technological warfare.